Hey, so I have excellent news. We have 7 more chapters, and we're finally done with this book, and then we can move on to SWAT Werewolves, which is gonna be awesome. I don't know, it'll be great. Um, Shout out to my brother Harinder, even though he's never gonna watch these videos, but he told me to give him one, so alright. Okay, on to chapter 21. I lived through some strange moments. Once, when Granny May took me Christmas shopping, we stopped at a Hallmark store. I was idly eyeing a display of candles, trying to decide if I could weasel 25 cents out of her for a gumball, when all the candles suddenly lit. I looked around and caught the eyes of a boy my age who, with a jerk of his head, put them all out again. It's certainly a novel way to meet girls, and one I'd hope worked out for him in the end. Another time I was working a case that required me to partner with a coven of witches who got so irate at our target that they cursed him. Before I could actually eliminate him, he stepped off the curb wrong and broke his ankle, ate a hamburger that had been left out overnight, and spent a night in the hospital puking it up, found his wife cheating with his boss, and chipped most of his front tooth off when a drunken waiter got too enthusiastic with a champagne cork and let it fly into his face. I think by the end he was probably grateful when an honest-to-goodness piano fell on his head. That's a pretty cool curse. I met psychics and snake charmers, serial killers, and geniuses, but nothing in my experience had ever come close to watching my own rebirth. I suddenly understood the supernatural meaning of weird. I'd always imagined resurrections would be quiet, sacred events, but now I thought maybe Lazarus had screamed just like holographic me did when my soul plummeted back into my body, and parts that should never be broken were forced into repair. My first deep, whooping intake of air echoed Vale's nightly wakings in a way that would make the watching me shudder. What? My first deep, whooping intake of air echoed Vale's nightly wakings in a way that made the watching me shudder. The creature who'd brought me back gave me a strange look, a mix of pride and pity that made him seem ancient. By the time I opened my eyes, he was gone. Feeling an immense sense of confusion, I struggled to focus. My first movements were so random I looked more like an infant than a professional vampire killer. A supreme effort brought me around to my hands and knees, and that's when I saw Matt. The soul behind my eyes cracked like roughly used china. Cassandra touched the orb, and the picture faded as my true collapse began. I remembered it all now. The keening, the wailing, the crying, crawling through the blood of my team, screaming for help, losing my mind. I sent her a grateful glance for sparing me the humiliation of an audience for at least that part of my journey through hell. "I'm so sorry," she said, swiping at the tears that rolled down her cheeks. She kept trying and failing to meet my eyes. Maybe she thought I intended to punish the messenger. And okay, that thought had crossed my mind, very briefly. "I'm not mad, Cassandra," I said. I struggled to explain. For me, it's always better to know. There was so much I couldn't remember from that night, so much I needed to understand. Now, I guess I do. So, Ben brought up the point that this was done a little backwards. Had they taken this scene, had they taken actually what happened that night and put it in as a prologue, or done something to intrigue us from the beginning, we would have been more invested in the book. To go with that weird intro, with that weird prologue, because we don't know who Vale was, like we didn't know any of these people, didn't make any sense. Like had she come up with this, we would have been like, what the fuck, like what's happening? It would have worked. Here, it's almost anticlimactic. It's like you're expecting some crazy shit because you know she's crazy and she obviously has gone through some shit to have the PTSD that she has, which clearly she does have. It's just we don't care about it. We do not care because at no point did the author say some shit went down, this is what it was. At no point did she allow us to connect the dots. And it's kind of fucked up. Like, when you're writing, you have to engage your reader. And the only way we got engaged is because it was terrible writing. As she started with something like this, I might not have been, well, I still would have been reading it because the language is pretty shitty. But still. Okay, and rant. "Yeah, but can you believe it?" asked Bergman. "I sat here and watched the whole thing, and I'm still trying to wrap my mind around the fact that you're—" I cocked my head at him. "Alive? Or should I say dead?" Vale gave my shoulder a sympathetic squeeze. "Welcome to the club." Eventually, the shock faded, replaced by a pressing need to rescue Cole and my own personal desire to reduce Aiden to so much vapor. Vale focus remained on Asan as it should, and we hoped to find all three at Alpine Meadows. Everybody sort of wandered off, leaving me free to do what I needed. So I worked. Packing our gear calmed me more than anything. The familiar movements through my memorized checklist made me feel, well, real. I spent extra time cleaning Grief, making sure it was fully loaded and ready to smoke. I found new pockets for the toys Bergman had brought that I wasn't actually wearing, and stowed the rest of our stuff where it belonged. I came more fully back to myself when I banged my head on the van door while loading it, and finally understood why sometimes people just need to be pinched. We left Bergman elbow deep in blood tests and Cassandra up to her eyeballs in some musty old books she brought with her. If worse came to worse, as I find it often does, maybe she could figure out how to deal with the Toral Dagon. She was sure giving it the old college try. She'd read for a while, finding something pertinent, and whispered into Angliocos. She hadn't gotten the marbles to move by the time we had it fetched for the van, but hopefully it was just a matter of time. Behind the wheel again, I maneuvered the van through traffic without once swearing at the red Volkswagen that cut me off or the light blue Taurus that hugged my bumper like a lost and lonely child. When I finally turned off our street, Vale heaved a sigh of relief. I expected you to slam on the brakes if that man followed you any closer. The thought never crossed my mind. He sat silent and stared at me for so long I started to squirm. What? I finally asked. Are you going to change now? The question took me back. Shouldn't I? He frowned, and the mask returned, settling over his face like a shroud. Of course, never mind. Look, Vale, it's reliving the nightmare, this new knowledge. It's too much, you know? I don't know how to act. Hell, I don't know what to think. Are you kidding me? Like, dude, she just fucking saw her whole team murdered, and she came back to fucking life. Like, give her a fucking break. The men in this fucking book, let me tell you, I would have fucking, staked him already. I shook my head. It's too big for me to figure out all at once, so I'm just going to be Jas Parks, Albert's daughter, Dave and Evie's sister, and Vale's Avar for now. If I need to tack another label on later, angel, demon, zombie, I guess there's room there at the end of the list. Vale's eyes snapped to my face when I said Avar, and stayed there until I met them with my own. The shroud lifted, and he smiled. I like your plan. Is that what it is? Yes. How about my idea to rescue Cole? I like that too. Where are the smoke grenades? In the duffel bag with everything else. What about this new communications invention Bergman gave you? Might as well try it out. I told him where to find it, and he dug it out, handing me my hearing aid and mouth ment, putting his own in place. We did a little test, and I got goosebumps when Vale's voice came to me in Barry White bass. They disappeared when he told me mine did the same. 45 minutes later, we reached the cul-de-sac behind Kosan's house. We would access his property from the back, case the place, figure out who was situated where, and move on to Plan B, which involved heaps of smoke and a well-timed call to the fire department. During the diversion, we would execute Cole's rescue and the double A's, if our luck held. Oh, yeah, Aiden and Asan. Okay. But not until they'd spilled the juicy details on tomorrow's ritual. Then we make them all wish they'd caught their own virus. Big words for a skinny, red-headed woman who'd never felt so overwhelmed in her life. Because to be honest, I wasn't sure we could pull this off. Yeah, we could put up a hell of a fight. But we were going against the most vicious, brutal minds on the planet. People who didn't believe in rules or mercy or the sanctity of life. And even worse, people with the money and the contacts to pull off whatever atrocious plan their devious little minds could concoct. To top it all off, I had no idea how to beat their Chiron. Starve it? Give it permanent amnesia? You've got to be kidding me. Hopefully we could wring that information out of Aiden and Asan as well. Otherwise, Cassandra, her ancient tomes, and her New Age library would be our last holding our last hope. The Chiron, just in case you guys forgot, is the Toral Dagon. We parked the van, Bill retrieved our bag, and I locked it up tight, using a special button on Bergman's key ring to activate its security system. I wasn't sure how it worked, but I wouldn't have been surprised to learn that he'd rigged the van to blow if anyone so much as wiggled the door handle while it was set. The oval pavement we'd chosen as our parking lot was well lit but quiet. Each of the 6 homes that surrounded it stood fitted to a house of president, but despite the lights going behind several of the windows, I had a feeling no one was home. It gave credence to my theory that anyone who could afford such luxury never had time to enjoy it. We walked into the strip of trees that led to the edge of Hassan's property, an artfully landscaped palm grove. It reminded me, despite the lights at my back, of a desert island. But maybe that was because I couldn't shake the feeling Cassandra's little show had given me that I had been marooned. When we hit the border of those trees and saw Hassan's expansive backyard, the feeling grew into a sickening sort of anxiety. Vale, I whispered, something's wrong. He nodded. We'll wait and watch.
Visitors! Better put on pants.
Sorry. Stupid Homer. 15 minutes later, nothing had moved, inside that house or out. I still couldn't relax. I was kind of expecting dogs, I said. Or at least a patrol, Bill added. Let us go. We made the short cross-country run to the kitchen door without incident. I started to check out the security system, then realized the door was cracked open. Vale. I spoke so low I thought even Bergman's communicators couldn't pick me up, but he turned to look at me. I pointed at the door, said, Trap? He studied it, and what he could see of the dark, empty room beyond through the window. It could be, he whispered. He nudged the door open and squeezed through. Snapping my watch band for maximum stealth, I followed close behind. My disquieting feeling doubled. I concentrated on it, trying to pinpoint its source. Something's really wrong here, I hissed as we crept past a six-burner stove, an immense island, and a 3-door fridge. What are we supposed to do with these details? Somebody is feeling extreme. It's hard to explain. They're on some sort of edge. Yes, I feel it too. What do you think? Are they waiting for us? They'll ask. I don't know. We found the back stair that Cole had used to escape from the guards at the party. Vale gestured that he would check the rooms along the furthest wall, so I took the 3 closets, working my way from the back towards the restroom where Cole and I had met. No one occupied the first room, but Derek's scent lingered, the way it will besides an empty trash bin. The second room had been an office, and might be again, but the file drawer sat open and empty, so did the desk drawers, and a dust outline showed where the computer had rested. They've cleared out, I said. This room used to hold a paper trail. Now even the shredder's clean. So far only 2 deserted bedrooms over here, Bill told me. Empty hangers, empty drawers. Damn, so much for solid evidence. Maybe not. I hear something coming from the 3rd room. I'll be right there. I hurried across the front hall to where Vale stood, poised to open the 3rd door once he satisfied himself it didn't hide an army. There's a source of bad feelings I'm getting, I whispered, behind that door. Did you hear that? Vale asked. I nodded, trying to identify the sound. There it was again, the deep, throaty utterance of a person in pain, and then, is that crying? I think so. Let's get in there. For an answer, Vale tried the door. It was locked. No problem, I whispered, pulling off my necklace. I slid the sharp tooth into the lock, waited a second, and turned it. The door yielded to my funky key with a soft click. I left the key in the lock and drew grief. Vale had left his cane in the van, but he was hardly unarmed. I felt his power shift and rise as we prepared to enter the room. On 3, Vale whispered. He raised his fingers in quick succession. 1, 2, 3. Vale threw open the door, shoving his power in front of him like a winter storm. Anyone inside would feel it as a compelling need to do whatever Vale required before their eyelids froze shut. I dove inside, staying low, seeking targets. The only one I saw was bleeding too heavily to be any sort of threat. I holstered grief and ran to where she lay on the floor of the bedroom, so frilly and sumptuous I could not have imagined violence occurring there, except for the beaten woman sprawled on the Persian rug. Amanda? She moaned, tried to open her swollen eyes. Only the right one obeyed, and that was just a slit. He said you'd come. Hassan? She shook her head, winced, and fresh tears tracked down her torn and broken face. Cole, she croaked. I could hardly believe talking was still an option for her. Give me your phone, Bill said. I'm calling an ambulance. I fished it from my pocket and tossed it to him. Too late, Amanda gasped. You must listen. She reached up and I took her hand. It seemed to comfort her. I thought that, since I couldn't sneak you in here, I could find some evidence for you. Oh, Amanda, didn't Cole tell you how dangerous your husband was? Yes, she licked her lips. So thirsty. I will get you some water, said Vale as his call already complete. He left the room. Is that the vampire? She asked. Yes. Mohammed thought he was dead. How do you know that? She took a couple of breaths, seemed to steel herself. I overheard him talking on the phone, so I confronted him. I sure wish you hadn't done that. We fought, she went on, her voice bleak. He admitted he killed my brother. He said Michael was a son of paradise, too, that the trip to India was his idea, to get some relics they needed to summon. But then he tried to back out. In my imagination, I can see them fighting over Hassan's violent plans, with Michael dying horribly as a result. But what in the world had he thought would happen? It angered me that this family had no sense of self-preservation. Somebody should have smacked them upside the head years ago and said, "Wake up, you fools, you can be hurt." But even as I raged, logical me wondered why they moved to the United States when they already had the current in their pockets in India. Amanda went on. He made me admit I'd hired Cole. Then he brought Cole here and made him watch while he beat me. That jackass. I hope he fucking dies terribly. One hopeless sob escaped her swollen lips. The bastard's gonna die for this, Amanda. Damn right he is. Amanda sighed. Okay. She was quiet for so long I thought maybe she'd passed off. Or passed on. She stirred. He burned the files, took the bag from the safe, except for... He said it was the key, so I snuck it from the bag while he was out. The hand I wasn't holding had been lying across her chest. Now she raised it, pointed to the bed. I lifted the ruffled skirt, fighting a flash of childhood apprehension as I peered underneath. Even my enhanced night vision, I could barely see the pyramid that sat there, just tall enough to brush the bed spring. I pulled it out. It weighed a lot more than I'd expected. What is it a key to? I wondered aloud. Vale, who just re-entered the room, came over to look. Something else for Cassandra to research. I guess so, if she has time, if we have time. Vale helped Amanda drink some of the water he'd brought her. When she'd had her fill, he laid her head back onto a pillow I'd taken from the bed. I'd never seen him so gentle. Muhammad took everything else with him. Amanda's mind must have been wandering, or shuddering down. She was repeating herself, but her next comment was new. She only repeated one sentence, people. He said the things in his bag. He'd use them to summon his goddess, and that... She squeezed her good eyes shut, and new tears emerged. That it had eaten my brother's soul. I patted her arm, at a loss to know how to comfort her. I spoke to Vale now. There it is, proof that he summoned the Toral Dagon in India. So why didn't it decimate that country? Why does he need to do it again over here? Maybe he did something wrong there. Maybe he timed it wrong, suggested Vale. Hey, you assholes! There's a woman dying! I shook my head, frustrated by our ignorance. Maybe Cassandra will come up with something. We heard the strident wail of the ambulance and agreed silently it was time to go. We have to leave, Amanda, I said. The paramedics are here. But she didn't hear me. Sometimes it happens like that, while you're looking the other way, distracted by events and conversations. Sometimes people just go. Those quiet departures sit wrong with me. That should be louder. Wait, I said as Vale took the pyramid. It seemed disrespectful to leave before Amanda. Her essence rose from her body, violet and blue with large golden crystals interspersed here and there. Do you see it? I whispered. Vale shook his head. I wish you could see it. It's so... There really were no words. Maybe just the ooh in the eye that comes unbidden from you when you see an amazing display of fireworks. And then, just as suddenly as the fire fades from the sky, she was gone. I retrieved my necklace key from the door, and we left the way we'd come, melting into the trees along the edge of Hassan's estate just as the ambulance crew reached Amanda's room and turned the light on. We've got to find Cole. An unnecessary statement, I know, but I could hardly contain the urgency I felt. Where do we suggest we look? I only seen Hassan in one other place, chatting up Aiden Street at Club Undead. It's as good a place to try as any. I let Bill drive. I think he was flattered. To be honest, directing a band around the interstate is, for me, as at most a jello mold elephant kind of thrill. Plus, I needed to get some updates. I called Bergman first. After a series of annoying beeps and whistles, he answered. Is this line secure? He said. Safe as a home run hitter. What have you got? Drugs in Vale's blood spy called Topamax. They tried to dope him with a huge dosage of an anti-seizure medication that's also used to prevent migraines. I repeated the report to Vale, who let out a string of curses that would have made Hugh Hefner blush. Okay, thanks. How's Cassandra doing? No luck so far. Would you mind helping her with the research? We really need to find out all we can about this monster. I described the pyramid we found and waited for him to jump on the bandwagon. Unfortunately, he's afraid of wagons and bands. There was a pause, during which I could almost hear him cringing. Bergman, she's trustworthy. His voice dropped to a whisper. I don't know. She's got that funky supernatural thing going on. As opposed to Vale's perfectly straightforward existence, and mine, come to think of it, she's different. In what way? I asked, wishing I could reach through the receiver and shake some sense into him. What if she touches me? Ah, now we're getting somewhere. The man who hoarded his secrets like pirate treasure wanted nothing to do with the woman who could divine them any time she pleased. I said, I promise she won't touch you, and if you're that worried about it, go find a pair of gloves, tell her you're cold, and get busy helping us out, man. Okay then, he said, after some hesitation. You'll call, or come knocking. Good enough. We broke the connection. Albert was next on my list. He answered on the first ring. Dad? Jazz? Hang on. The background blare of Albert's TV muted. I heard some more clicks as he transferred to his safe phone. Okay, I'm here. I know it hasn't been long, but I've got a lead. Yeah? I guess I sounded, well, shocked because he said, Hey, I may be feeble old Marine, but I've still got connections. And? There's something funny about Tom Bazowski. The retired football player? Right. He has an unnaturally large turnover in interns. Seems like they keep getting sick. With what? Anemia? That is interesting. Has the name Mohammed Kahad Ibn Hassan come up in relation to the senator, or maybe Aiden Straight? Hang on, the first name sounds familiar. He started to mumble to himself, not so you could understand him, and I heard the sound of paper shuffling. Yeah, here it is. I asked my contact for anything unusual, and he included this little item with the other stuff. Says here Bazowski has plastic surgery done by Hassan right before he ran for senator 5 years ago. Thanks. Keep digging, will you? Sure thing. Oh, and that little secretary of yours, Martha? Yeah? I kept my voice cool, but inside my heart had jumped several inches to the right. She's clean. Glory hallelujah. Thanks. Hey, while you're researching, would you see if Bazowski has a prescription for a drug called Topamax? And look for connections to technology purchasing for the agency. I described the faulty beacon without saying how I'd carried it. No point in starting a fight I didn't have time to finish. You're a fucking grown-ass woman, dude. Also, see if he's got any connections to an exotic pet dealer or something similar. We found a dead rattlesnake in Phil's luggage, and we'd like to know who packed it. Damn, okay. Jazz? Yeah? Are you eating right? Getting plenty of fruits and vegetables and all that stuff? I'm just asking because Shelby's been lecturing me on nutrition. You'd be surprised what good food will do for you. Don't worry, I said, both exasperated that it took this long for the blockhead to figure out maybe he should eat well and warmed by the fact that he gave a crap about my health. I'm eating fine. So's my vampire friend, but we won't get into that. No sense in flirting with a stroke at your age, Albert. Why don't you call Evie? She definitely needs a good lecture on nutrition. Maybe I will. I hung up. Bill glanced over at me. Both his eyebrows went straight up. What is the source of evil, Garen? He inquired. I sicked Albert on Evie. I thought you loved your sister. I do. She realizes when she hears from him, and that's good for the baby. So eating right, which is all you'll probably talk about. I see. Is that the only reason you're smiling? Martha's innocent. They got a big twitch of the lips, which translated to a big grin for Vale. And I think we found our senator. So, set up? Alright, see you tomorrow.